Welcome, everybody. Let's see what we got here. Only 6 folks, huh? Well, we'll see how it goes anyway. I'll give it a minute or two for some stragglers and then I'll get started. How y'all doing?
I'm doing good.
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right. Welcome. So let me just ask the question so I can get that out of the way. Does anybody have anything they want to workshop today for the new project? Because if not, I have just a presentation that I'll show you guys today on setting and tone. So if not, well, then I'll forge ahead with that. So which is fine. That's kind of what I was preparing for anyway. I didn't think anybody would be quite ready to workshop today. Alrighty. Well, let's get going, and anybody who straggles in can just kind of pick up where we are as we move forward. So, just as I say so. Picking up one more. Ben, I thought you weren't going to be able to make it today.
Yeah, I ended up injuring my foot, so I didn't go out of town, but I'm fine.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
You got to go to the doctor?
No, it's just, I just like sprained it a little, so it's very sore, and considering that most of what I'd be doing when I was out of town was hiking, that was probably not a good idea.
Oh, yeah, probably not. Okay, well, welcome. Glad you could make it. I'm assuming that you don't have anything you really want to workshop today.
I have my character dossiers if you'd like to read them, but
well, that's up to you. If you want to workshop them here with the class, or those of us who are participating today, you can do that, or we can forge ahead with my presentation on setting and tone.
Actually, Professor Walsh.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't have like anything to workshop, but I have like 3 questions about like the new Bible. So I would really like to continue like with my main idea, because I think that I can pull off very good projects, like things about it and all that stuff. So I was wondering if for this assignment, for this Sunday, I could do the dossiers like from new characters, that characters that appear throughout the way. Also for the beat sheet, I was wondering if I could just do a long version of it, like the entire pilot episode. Because for the first beat sheet, I just did it like for the very first scenes. So I was wondering if I could do it like for the entire episode.
So for your 6 to 8 page, since I haven't looked at your script yet, your 6 to 8 page script was what? A couple of scenes from this pilot? Was that the idea?
Yeah.
So is your pilot a 1 hour or a half an hour presentation?
1 hour.
So 1 hour. So then you're going to do like a 12 to 15 page scene or a group of scenes for your final project out of from the pilot?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Then as long as you're, like I mentioned on Tuesday, as long as you're showing me progress in that project and you're continuing to write and you're continuing to generate new material that is contributing, in other words, don't spitball your old project if that's all it is, pick another project so you have a variety of things for your portfolio. But if this is really a thing with you and you want to have this document as something you can present and show, then let's go ahead in that respect.
I totally want to do like to keep going like with this project, and of course don't like submit all the old stuff that I've written. No, I just want like to improve it, like to create new documents that are related to the same project. So I won't be uploading like the same old projects that I already submitted. No, like I'm uploading something different, but with the same path of the project, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, what you don't want to do is turn in what you turned in before.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
That won't get you any credit. It's all about fresh writing, and if it happens to build on your existing idea that you're passionate about, then I don't want you to spend this rest of the semester writing about something that you don't feel. I want you to continue on that if that's truly what's happening here. And if not, anybody who's listening who's not in that situation, then obviously this is an opportunity for some new material, or for you to expand on one of your other story ideas that you came up with in the beginning of the semester. That was the whole point of that assignment, was to give you a stable of ideas that you could wrestle with over the course of the semester. So what's your so Ben, what is your decision here? Do you want to workshop your documents, or do you want to
Yes and no. I don't really care about the stuff that like I just worked on, like the character dossiers. That's like not like it'd be helpful, but it's not like super important. Would we be able to workshop my script that I submitted?
Yeah, I mean, it's submitted for a grade. So what do you want to do if we come to some dramatic reinterpretations of that idea?
Then potentially I could, depending on obviously how much it is, I could re-edit that and submit that as one of my 3 documents for the new Bible, along with the 2 character dossiers.
So it's an episode from your
It is the first part of the pilot episode.
Okay. How many pages is it for, just so I can gauge?
It is 15 pages, I believe. It might be 14, but I think it's 15. I'll check on that.
I love the idea of workshopping. I can always, record what I was going to do here in this session for you guys to watch later. I would much rather, since we have the benefit of all of these wonderful participants, if you want to workshop it, man, let's do it.
All right.
So you're catching me. I'm going to do a little riffing now, I suppose, because I was, I have to change gears, but this is a good thing. So do you have the document in PDF form that you can, I guess?
I uploaded it to web courses, but I could find it and then upload it to like this chat if you'd like.
Okay, I downloaded it, but it'll be buried in a mass file with everybody else's stuff.
Here, I'm just going to go into web courses and re-download the file. So
if you can, I think what'll work is if you share it to the chat as a PDF.
Mm-hmm. I can also share my screen if you'd like.
Yes, we'll do that too. Everybody can download and they can read along if they want, or they can follow on the. I know I'm always frustrated when I can't drag the page down because it's someone else's screen share.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
If you want to give that to them, they can follow along on their own PDF version, and then I'll set you up as a what you call it?
Co-host. Also, if there's someone else who wants to workshop their stuff instead, go ahead. Like I've already workshopped some stuff, but I didn't hear anyone else speaking up. So
yeah, I'm open to the idea. So let's do it. So
I don't need a workshop, but I do have a question, Professor.
Yeah.
So for the character dossiers, I want to keep them all together. So for the old document I submitted, I'm just including more under the 2 that you wanted for the protagonist and antagonist, but I'm just including more characters in that same document so I could keep it all together. Is that okay?
Is there a way that you can shade the old stuff so I know what the old is and what the new is, but without having to pull out your old documents and cross-reference?
Yes, sir. I will do something with it to like tell you if this was old and what's new.
Yeah, or just like make the old text a different color or something so that I know that it's from the last submission. That
Yes,
would
sir.
be okay, I guess. I use shaded, I just I bring in a shape and I make it 50% opacity and I make it like light gray, and then you can see what's, the old stuff and what's the new, but whatever you want to do, that's fine. As long as I have a clear idea of what's the new material.
Also for, oh, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Also for my treatment, I was kind of changing some things, like I added more characters, kind of changed my log line and synopsis, but not everything on the treatment changed. So should I just go ahead and submit it? Because I deleted some of the old things out of it and changed it with new things.
Sounds like a page 1 rewrite. Is that what we got going on here?
No, it's like the story stays the same. I reworked the way I wrote my synopsis and thought about the log line more and put more emphasis in some characters that didn't do that much of a detail into the first treatment.
Yeah, send it in. So you got a revised synopsis log line in your treatment, and then you've got how many dossiers are you doing? Just
I'm gonna do 3 more dossiers.
okay, that'll do it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's good. So what was the consensus, Natalia? Did you have something or no that you want to workshop? It was just questions.
Yeah, it was just a question, but now I have a clear vision of what I want to do, like
Okay.
with this Bible.
Okay, great. So then I guess so Ben, did you upload a
Yep, uploaded in the chat.
I don't have the chat open. That would help. There we go. Okay, and so then I can click to download. And where's it gonna go? Let's see.
And it is 14 pages, not 15.
Cool. Counting the
Not counting the cover page.
Not-
14 actual pages.
Okay, well that's fine. Okay, so then do you want to have members of the group read parts, or do you want to read us the whole thing?
If we have enough people to do a table read, I think that's probably the best way to go. But I know not everyone is necessarily gonna participate.
I think it's more fun that way, because then we get a difference in maybe, even if it's not dramatically, appropriate or whatever, at least we get a difference in tone between characters. How many characters are we talking about?
I am counting that right now.
So
I'm gonna write down the character list.
Zip and Zap, Quentin.
Yeah, Quentin.
Scarwing. Craven.
Yeah, Zip, Zap. Does Zop also speak? I think so.
I got Zip and Zap.
I think that is all of the characters.
Sounds like 5.
I'm
Zop,
counting.
there he is.
Yeah, I'm counting more than 5. Quentin, Glenn, Scarwing, Johnny, Craven, Zip, Zap, Zop.
Okay, so that's not, and Johnny 7.
Yeah.
So okay, do we have enough people here?
I'm actually counting 8.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Great.
Some people can double dip, because I'm pretty sure, for example, like Johnny is a very minor character. I'm pretty sure he doesn't share any lines with anyone other than Quentin. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll have you read the action lines then, and all of the scene headings and setups, right?
I can do that.
Do I have somebody that wants to take, can we do Zip, Zap, and Zop all the same person?
I think that might be difficult, because they have lines right after the other.
Okay, then
they do all kind of sound alike though, so it might not be the worst thing for one person to just do all of them.
Okay, do we have anybody who wants to volunteer to be Zip, Zap, Zop? Or Zip and Zap, and then we can get a separate Zop, or a separate Zip and Zop?
I'll do any role. Like, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, do you want to do like Zip and Zop, and then we need somebody to do Zap, so we get a little difference in tone there?
I think she can do all 3, because they're mostly the same character.
Okay. All right, Jamaica wins the prize. You get to be Zip, Zap, Zop. So now we need Quentin, right?
Yeah, he's the main character, so this is going to be a lot of stuff.
Okay, anybody dramatically performance oriented here?
If you want, I could do Quentin, and then someone else can do the action lines.
Okay, you want me to do the setups then and the action lines, and then you can be Quentin?
Sure.
Okay, and then we need Johnny, right?
Johnny is another minor role.
Anybody up for Johnny?
I could be whoever.
Okay, you want to be Johnny, and then we need what?
Craven also. Yeah, Natalia, if you want to be both Johnny and Craven, that's fine because they don't share any lines.
Johnny and Crave?
Craven, yeah.
Craven.
Then who's left?
Glenn.
I can do that.
Glenn? I didn't
Thank
see. Okay.
Abby, you said that you could do that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, there's Glenn. Okay. Glenn comes in on like page 8 or 9, right? Okay. Is that everyone then? Wasn't there one more? Was there?
As far as I can tell, Scarwing, very much.
Scarwing, yeah. It's a one-liner.
I think it might be 2. I think he has another one later.
Anybody want to pick up Scarwing? Anyone? Bueller? I'll do Scarwing.
Okay.
All right.
Do you want me to share my screen so that people, or do you want to share your screen?
Probably because I'm reading the setups and the whatnots, and then we'll get everybody can read their parts off their PDF, I guess. All right. So, do we want to go ahead and do we want to start and stop this, or do we want to read through and then discuss?
Up to you. I think maybe let's like read partway through, give feedback, and then the rest of the way.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So is like page 9 or 10 a good place to stop, or what?
I'm looking over it right now. I think I'm trying to see where that scene ends.
I'm seeing something looks like it's winding up around the bottom of page 7 or top of page 8.
Yeah, 8 after 8.5.
So we'll break before interior arcane sanctum.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's do that then. Groovy. Okay. I'm all 60s now because I was doing a presentation on the Vietnam experience. So all right, I will share my screen for the setups and the scene headings, and then you all can read your parts from your PDFs.
Does anyone not remember what part they have?
I'm going to do Scarwing and then all of the in between.
Here, I'll make a list.
Sorry, where can we find the PDF?
It's in the
chat.
Also, he's gonna share his screen, so you can look there as well.
If you open up the chat, there should be a downloadable PDF file in there at the top.
Here, I have it now.
And then Jamaica, what you were Zip Zap and Zop, right?
Yes.
Zip zap zap. All right, I can go ahead and share my screen, I guess now, right? Okay. So let's do that. I'm going to share just the script. How's that sound? Nah, so I can see the chat and the, there we go. Groovy. Okay. Good. So we have Castle of Curiosities, written by Ben Geller. Can I cannot. Can I do it now? I can. There we go. All right. So here we go. Interior, Wellsboro Main Street, morning. Okay. It's early. It's the early hours of the morning in the small town of Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. Quentin Little, is that his last name?
Little.
Oh, Quaint Little. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
The adjective. The adjective.
Quaint little shops line Main Street, including a family-run pharmacy, a hole-in-the-wall diner, and a local boutique. Walking along the street is Quentin King, a suave and confident man in his late 30s. His outfit looks somewhere between a pimp and a steampunk snake oil salesman. Quentin approaches a shop on the end of the corner. The 2-story building has a large sign reading Quentin King's Castle of Curiosities. The roof of the building is adorned with painted plywood parapets and plastic gargoyles. Blinds on each window are closed, giving no view as to what might lurk inside. Quentin holds a cup of coffee in one hand and pulls a large ring of keys from his other. He unlocks the door. Interior, Quentin King's Castle of Curiosities, morning. So let me just look at that real. Okay, Main Street, and now we're in the castle. Okay, Quentin turns on the harsh fluorescent lighting, revealing an absolute spectacle of a business. The castle is filled with exhibits of American folklore. Glass cases contain wonderful curiosities like a cursed monkey's paw, genuine taxidermied jackalope, and plastered Sasquatch footprints. All paths in the shop lead to a robust gift shop section filled with racks of t-shirts, bowls of healing crystals, and shelves of rune-etched figurines. In the background, a small, shadowy figure scurries behind a cabinet. Quentin looks around like he heard something, scanning the environment carefully. He faces forward again, takes a breath, and whips around, holding his arm outstretched with an open hand. Suspended in the air is a shrieking Zip, a 2-foot-tall goblin with dark green skin, lanky limbs, a long, crooked nose, and big, pointy ears. Zip is holding a broom with a sharpened handle point aimed directly at Quentin. The air around Zip shimmers around him with pulsating energy. 2 more goblins holding similar pointed brooms rush out from behind the cabinet and stand behind Quentin.
Oh, hi, Mr. King. Didn't know that was you. New hat?
Quentin lowers his hand and lets out a relieved breath. The shimmer around Zip disappears and Zip falls flat on his face. The other 2 goblins lower their brooms and look down with disappointed faces.
What the hell, Zip? I just went out for coffee.
Sorry, boss. The light started us.
One of the other goblins, Zap, speaks up.
They're really bright. Maybe we could put in some sort of dimmer switch.
I'll be sure to make that a priority.
Quentin dusts himself off and seems to relax.
Well, customers will be here soon. Go to the back and get ready.
The goblins scurry off to the back, and Quentin opens the blinds, letting sunlight pour in. He flips the sign on the door from closed to open. Quentin walks behind the main counter and picks up a clipboard. The clipboard has a paper that lists a variety of sketchy orders, including drugs, weapons, and large sums of money. Quentin scans the list and writes down dollar amounts on the crossed off items. Stumbling out from the back room is Hugh Mann, a lumbering figure in a trench coat with a very lumpy chest, awkwardly large and crudely decorated papier-mâché head, and the ends of trash pickers peeking out of the armholes. The definitely not 3 goblins in a trench coat figure is wearing a name tag that says Hugh Mann.
Watch the counter. Let me know if any VIPs come in.
Quentin walks into the back room, closing the door behind him. Interior, broom closet, day. The broom closet is filled with cleaning supplies and boxes of regular inventory. Quentin walks straight through a blank section of the wall as if it weren't there. As he passes through the wall, glowing blue light outlines his body. Interior, Arcane Sanctum, day. Quentin enters a torchlit room with the stone walls lined with bookshelves. In one corner sits a table with glowing runes and a table with beakers and bubbling potions. In another corner sits a pile of large wooden crates. 3 small piles of pillows and blankets lie on the floor. Hanging from the ceiling is a birdcage with a tiny bed in it. Sleeping on the bed is Scarwing, a 6-inch tall pixie with a long, jagged scar across his face. Scarwing hears Quentin walk in and he shakes himself awake. Scarwing opens the small door to the birdcage and flies down, landing on Quentin's shoulder and speaking with a deep, gruff voice that does not match his petite, almost cute exterior. Morning, boss. Anything going on today?
I have some VIPs coming in to pick up their shipments.
How much are you pulling in from this one?
6,500 from the Coke, 10 grand from the Glocks, and a 1% cut from the cash.
Quentin waves his hand as a glowing rune appears in the air. 2 spectral purple hands float in the air, grab a crowbar, and pry open the tops of the crates. One crate is filled with bricks of cocaine, another is filled with pistols, and a third is filled with stacks of $100 bills. Quentin removes his coat, revealing a concealed holster containing a handgun in one slot and a wand in another slot. Quentin takes some worn leather-bound tomes and opens them up. The interior is hollowed out, and Quentin fills them with bricks of cocaine. As he does this, the spectral hands are over in another corner of the room. They are pouring a thin layer of plaster into a large footprint-shaped mold. They place one of the pistols in a plastic bag and place it into the plaster mold, then fill the mold to the top with more plaster. They repeat this process as a separate pair of hands stuff stacks of money into stuffed jackalopes and sews them shut. As Quentin continues to prepare packages, the lumbering figure of Hugh Mann enters the Arcane Sanctum.
Hey, boss, we got someone asking for you.
Quentin checks his watch with a look of confusion. The watch reads 9:35.
Huh? The first pickup isn't scheduled until 11.
She asked for you specifically.
Quentin puts his coat back on and follows the goblins out of the Arcane Sanctum. Interior, Quentin King's Castle of Curiosities, day. Standing at the counter is Jessica Craven, a woman in her late 20s wearing a stuffed park ranger's uniform and holding a manila envelope. Her right arm is covered in bandages below the sleeve. Her glance quickly shifts from left to right as if she is looking to see if something is hiding from her. Her face and body is covered with scratches and small bruises. She has heavy bags under her bloodshot eyes as if she hasn't slept in days. When she sees Quentin, her expression turns from paranoia to urgency.
Are you Quentin King?
The very same. Welcome to the Castle of Curiosities. What can I do for you?
I know this sounds crazy, but I don't know who else to turn to with this.
This being what exactly?
Craven puts the envelope on the table.
My name is Jessica Craven. I'm a Pennsylvania park ranger, and 2 nights ago when I was on my shift, I was attacked by something. It had blood red eyes and a sleek black fur and long curved claws and fangs that were dripping with this thick dark liquid. It pounced from being this cluster of trees and managed to cut up my arm before I could fire off a couple shots to scare it away.
Okay, sounds like you were attacked by a wolverine. I don't see what this has to do with me.
I've never seen a wolverine like this.
Craven opens up the envelope and takes out a series of grainy black and white pictures. The first one shows a high-angle view of Craven next to a golf cart holding a flashlight. The next picture shows a dark blur coming from the nearby trees. The third picture shows Craven on the ground with a dark figure on top of her. The figure is roughly the size of a large Great Dane with short, greasy black fur. Its snout is long and narrow, filled with jagged teeth dripping with liquid. The outline of the creature's ribcage is visible through its slender torso. The fourth picture shows Craven shooting her handgun at the creature. The fifth picture shows another dark blur, this time headed towards the trees and away from Craven.
These pictures were taken from a camera in a nearby tree. We've been getting reports of strange sightings and people going missing in the park recently, so we set this up. I told the head ranger about the attack, but she didn't believe me. When I discovered these pictures, I didn't even know how to make sense of it. Can you please help me?
Wow, what makes you think I can help you?
I mean, this kind of stuff is your whole thing, right?
Craven gestures around the shop at all the exhibits of mythical creatures.
Yeah, but, I mean, the castle is mostly an entertainment establishment. You don't actually believe all this stuff, do you?
Well, I didn't until recently.
So what do you want me to actually do about this?
I don't know exactly. Tell me what it is. Tell me its weaknesses. Just tell me I'm not crazy.
Well, I've seen my fair share of weird things in Wellsboro, and this is certainly not the craziest. As for what this is, I know about as much as you do, but I could ask around and do a little research.
Thank you so much, Mr. King. I really appreciate it.
Now, hold on, Craven. I am running a business here. You don't just get this information for free.
Oh, of course.
Craven goes over to the t-shirt rack, pulls one off, and sets it on the counter. Quentin looks down at the shirt and back up at Craven, seemingly unimpressed. Craven stands there for a moment, pulls a Bigfoot magnet off a stand, and places it on the counter as well. Quentin continues staring straight at her. Craven picks up a wooden box full of dozens of crystals and places it on top of the pile. The box has a sign that says 1 for $5 or 3 for $12. Quentin smiles and starts ringing the items up, counting out each crystal and charging the full $5 for each. When he is done, Craven hands him a hefty wad of cash. Quentin opens up the elaborate bronze manual cash register and places the money inside, handing Craven a few bucks as change. As she takes the change, Quentin coughs and pushes forward a plastic tub with a sign that reads, "Tips appreciated." Craven sighs and places the money into the tub.
Pleasure doing business with you. I'll let you know when I find something.
Craven gathers up her pile of souvenirs.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Craven turns around and begins to walk out of the shop. As she's halfway out the door, Quentin smiles and yells after her.
Don't forget to charge those crystals under moonlight for the best effects.
Craven looks back and shakes her head, then closes the door. Hugh Man turns towards Quentin and a voice issues from the middle of its torso.
What was that thing? I couldn't see.
No idea. I'll probably wait a couple of days, tell her it's a hellhound or a shadow beast or something, and tell her that she needs to get out of town. Sooner or later, some yokel will shoot it, stuff it, and everyone will think it's a fake.
From the bottom of the trench coat covered goblin totem pole. From the bottom of the trench coat covered goblin totem pole, the third goblin, Zop, speaks up.
What if people keep going missing?
Then the rangers will close down the park, people will stop going in, and it will starve. Either way, not our problem.
Okay, boss. What about the woman?
Nobody will believe her, and she'll eventually rationalize it as a wolverine or a mountain lion or something. She goes on with her life, and we go on with ours. Watch the store. I need to finish getting the packages ready for today.
Quentin walks back into the closet. Is that where we were going to stop?
Yeah.
Okay. That's going pretty well. Do you want to go all the way to the end and then just double back for critique, or do you want to
Yeah,
stop?
we can do that.
Because it's flowing pretty good. So, okay, let's push on then. Interior Arcane Sanctum Day. Quentin walks through the illusory wall into the Arcane Sanctum, waves his hand to create the rune, and the spectral hands reappear and continue assembling packages. Cut to Interior Quentin King's Castle of Curiosities later that day. The castle is now bustling with activity, with a few families and groups of children walking around the castle, looking at exhibits and browsing the gift shop. Hugh Man is talking with one family, standing next to an exhibit about the different types of goblins. Johnny, a skinny man in his early 20s, wearing a dark hoodie, heavy backpack,
There probably should be an and there.
and heavy backpack, walks into the shop. He looks around, seemingly uncomfortable at the presence of children and families.
Hey, Q-Man. What's up, man?
Johnny, nice to see you again. Let me grab your order.
Quentin walks into the broom closet, grabs 2 cardboard boxes, and brings them to the counter.
It's all here?
Yep, 2 cases of 100% pure Colombian books.
Quentin opens the top box, revealing neatly packed rows of the same leather-bound books he was packing in the Arcane Sanctum.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Is that Colombian from the country?
I think so.
Okay, because if it is, it's with a no, not with a U.
I remember you talking about this in like one of our classes, and I'm just like, I remember that she told me the difference, but I don't remember which one it was.
Okay, so Colombia with a U is the state, and then
Okay.
Colombia with an O is the country.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, just for you to know. Sorry about that.
Colombian with a U is also a reference to the age of Columbus, the pre.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was just trying. Yeah, sorry. It was just a quick
Yeah,
parenthesis.
no, I'm joking.
But-
I just got it wrong.
But in terms of the Peruvian marching dust, that would be the O version of Colombian.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Quentin opens the box top, revealing neatly packed rows of the same leather-bound books he was packing in the Arcane Sanctum.
Thanks, man. Here you go.
Johnny hands over the backpack to Quentin. Quentin opens up the backpack, sifts through stacks of cash inside, and shakes Johnny's hand.
Pleasure as always. I'm running out of those old books, by the way, so if you bring them back once you've moved the stuff, I'll give you a 2% discount on your next order.
You got it, man. See you next month.
Johnny takes the boxes and walks out.
Enjoy your reading.
As Johnny walks away from the store, Glenn, a tall, slender man wearing a fedora, earmuffs, dark sunglasses, leather gloves, and a scarf around his mouth, walks in.
Are you Quentin King?
The very same. Welcome to the castle.
Glenn takes off his sunglasses, revealing his bright golden eyes. He lowers his scarf, exposing his pale gray skin. He continues to communicate, but his mouth doesn't move.
Do you have somewhere more private to speak?
Oh, yeah, give me a couple minutes. Patrons of Quentin King's Castle of Curiosities. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we're gonna be closing up a little early today. Please finish up making any purchases, and we will be open tomorrow at normal hours.
There are some mild grumbles from the crowd. A couple of people come up to the counter and buy some souvenirs. Then customers clear out. Quentin regards the trench-coated figures with trepidation and waves his hand towards the back room.
Follow me.
Glenn follows Quentin behind the counter, through the broom closet and through the illusory section of wall. Interior Arcane Sanctum, evening. Glenn looks around, but does not seem surprised by the hidden room or the plethora of magic.
Quentin King, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Special Agent Galendriel Elefine, sent directly from the Citadel of Arcana.
Glenn removes his outerwear, revealing tactical-looking magical clothing. Across his tunic lies a bandolier filled with small scrolls, rune-carved stones, and potions. Glenn's golden eyes and light gray skin are complemented by his platinum blonde hair and long, pointy ears.
An elf. I haven't seen one of you in years. What did you say your name was?
My name is Special Agent Galendriel Elefine, Strike Force Commander of the Citadel of Arcana.
Benadryl Elephant?
Galendriel Elefine.
I'll just call you Glenn. Glenn.
You may call me what you wish, Mr. King.
So, what brings you to my shop? I know about the Citadel, but I've been operating here for almost 2 decades. I've never had a run-in with y'all before.
We've been monitoring reports of strange sightings and disappearances. Recently, one of our scouts spotted a pack of creatures in the surrounding woods. He was able to send us a vision of the beast before they overtook him.
Glenn holds out a crystal. An arcane rune appears, and shadows swirl around the crystal to form a floating screen. The magical screen displays a first-person view with 2 cloaked arms visible. 3 of the same beasts from Craven's pictures are slowly stalking towards the figure whose view we are watching. The figure tries to fire off a couple of blasts of bright arcane energy, but the beasts dodge out of the way. One beast pounces towards the figure, knocking him onto the ground. He screams as his hand glows with one more rune, and the video freezes.
My job is to get this situation under control and ensure the citizens of Wellsboro and the secrets of the arcane world remain safe.
All right, have at it. What do you need me for? Oh, that's supposed to be Glenn. Whoopsie.
As Archmage of Wellsboro, I have come to you for your aid in our mission and safe passage in your domain.
What did you just call me?
Glenn holds up his hand. An arcane rune appears in front of him, and energy swirls around to produce an illusory 3-dimensional hologram in the center of the room. The illusion shows an overhead map of Wellsboro with glowing white lines coursing through it, all meeting in the woods just outside of town.
Wellsboro contains a convergence of mana ley lines. This makes Wellsboro into a magical domain. The most powerful magic user in each domain becomes the Archmage. According to Citadel bylaws, in order to operate in a domain, we need permission of that domain's Archmage. In this case, that would be you.
What are you talking about? I never became anything.
We've been observing you for some time, Quentin. After your mentor passed away, you became the sole magic user and have remained uncontested for years. As such, you've gained a significant amount of power over this land.
Human stumbles into the arcane sanctum. Atlas
Whoopsie, those are 3 characters that I deleted but forgot to take out.
Okay. Okay, I'll just read it anyway. Human stumbles into the arcane sanctum. Atlas, Sid, and Carmen turn around to look at the strange figure.
Hey, boss. Everything okay in here?
Glenn turns around and looks at Human, Zip, zap, and zop all scream, and Human collapses in on itself. The goblins squirm out of the trench coat, still screaming and huddled together.
Ah, an elf.
Sorry about that. They have some bad experiences with elves.
You need not worry. Like your friends here, I too am a refugee of the Elven regime in Elvon.
Scarwing flies down from his cage and looks Glenn in the eye. Yeah, they're not only the ones who got you screwed over by people like you.
I assure you, little one, they may be my people, but I am nothing like them.
Scarwing continues to glare at Glenn and flies on Quentin's shoulder, then crosses his arms.
So there's one important question you never answered. Why should I help you?
Well, as Archmage, it is your duty, your privilege, to protect your domain.
You guys seem capable enough. I've seen what these things can do. Why would I put myself in danger to help the Citadel?
The Citadel let you run rampant in this domain out of respect for your position and your late mentor. But if you are not willing or able to fulfill your duties, we will have no choice but to remove you from the position and to find a more cooperative replacement.
Quentin steps closer to Glenn. He scowls up at Glenn's sharp gray face. Quentin's eyes glow bright purple, and the air around him shimmers as Quentin's body radiates with energy. Glenn continues to stare down at Quentin, unimpressed.
Remove me, huh? And how do you plan on doing that?
By any means necessary. Don't kid yourself, Quentin. You are a skilled illusionist and enchanter, but we both know that you're not a fighter.
Quentin stares for a moment. His scowl slowly turns into a grin, and he lets out a small chuckle.
Well then, let's take out these monsters, huh? What are we waiting for?
The group lowers their guard and look relieved.
First step is to locate these beasts. This is your domain. Do you know where we should start?
I may have an idea.
Quentin pulls out his phone and dials a number. He waits for a couple of moments and then speaks while looking at Glenn.
Craven, good news. I may have a solution to your little infestation.
And that's the end. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep the document open in the event that we have sections we want to comment on here. So I'm going to go back to the top sheet and start with the first frame here. So this is interesting because it plays well into the discussion for this week, which was all about the first image. So we have a lot of description here about the environment. We got a lot of description about the Castle of Curiosities and so forth. Does anybody have any observations or comments that they would like to open the conversation with at this time?
It was very easy to like picture everything, and I don't know, maybe because the main character's name was Quentin, my mind kept going to the sci-fi show The Magicians and like the magic that was with everything. But it was very easy to keep up with the storyline, kind of picture what's going on.
That was actually completely unintentional. I've never seen The Magicians. I just wanted an alliterative name to go with Castle of Curiosities.
That's interesting. So well, that raises an interesting question, I think, which is then what were your mental images about this world and where did you start? What were your inspirations?
So this story has actually been like sitting in my mind for like over a year. I started this playing in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that inspired this thing. It's now changed significantly from what was in the campaign. I've pared down a lot of the characters to make it flow better as a story, kind of make it more of like a buddy cop sort of thing. But the world is directly inspired by that campaign. Wellsboro is a real town that the person who was running the campaign grew up in, so he made that the setting, like the hidden magical world. And then Quentin King is a complete original character that I played in the campaign, and his whole backstory with like the crime mixed with being like the magic and the having the like tourist trap town was my like original idea, and I played that character for months in this Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So when I decided to turn it into a show, I had a very good idea already of the character.
So this is already a TSR game module.
Not exactly.
Well,
It
the town is, and the concept.
No, the story of the thing was completely original, and the world was completely original to that game. It wasn't a pre-written module or anything. It was a homebrew thing.
So the only consistencies then between the TSR game module and your story would be the name of the town and the fact that the town is associated with magic.
What I don't entirely understand the question. I mean, it's not an official published thing out there. It was just a homebrew thing that my group came up with.
Okay.
And because Wellsboro is a real town, and that was where the Dungeon Master grew up. So that's where he based the story.
Okay.
And then the story and the town was all like, and the hidden magical world, that was all completely original. It's not a published thing anywhere. And I took that inspiration and took my character and like a couple of the other side characters and then created the separate story. Like the actual story of the campaign that we played in is very different because it involved like primordial gods that were influencing things and chosen ones and stuff. And I figured that was a little bit too complex with a little bit too many moving parts to make it into like a consistent story. So I kind of pared it down to just my character, one of the side characters, and one of the other like characters who's sort of the Craven to be the sort of fish out of water audience surrogate in the story.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. All right. The reason why I asked is because I don't know if they still do it or not, but TSR used to publish game modules that had the whole world built, and it had characters, non-playing characters listed in it, and all of their particulars, and what their dice were, and all this stuff.
Yeah, this is just
so
an unpublished.
Okay,
this is an unpublished homebrew setting that my friend came up with.
That's cool.
So that I'm avoiding all copyright stuff.
Yeah, I think it would just be this is one of those things that we haven't really covered it. I might have touched on it, but all scripts for TV shows, particularly after a show is up and running, a new script, for instance, not only does it go through table reads and go through bullpen analysis like we're doing now, but it'll also go through a department within the production structure or at the studio, which is they call it oh God, they call it it's permissions, and basically it's a department where they look for any possible links to copywritten material outside of the context of the show, and then they seek to get approvals for those references if possible, and if not, then they create a list of things that the writers have to adapt and change to avoid copyright infringement. So
yeah, as far as I can tell, everything here is completely fair use. Like I was inspired by the game, but there's nothing in there that's inherently linked to the game that isn't just general fantasy stuff. Wellsboro is a real town, so I wouldn't really, that's not copyrighted. And the Castle of Curiosities is an original creation. I was kind of inspired by like just an aggregate of like Midwestern / like Northeast rural tourist traps and old curiosity shops. So it's not based on any one thing in particular.
it reminds me of The Thing in I think it's New Mexico. For like 70 miles on the 10, you get these billboards that say "Thing, what is it?" And then 15 miles after that, it's like, strange curiosity. And then another 15 miles, you'll see gift shop. And then beyond that, you'll see, come in and see Thing, and this happens for like I said, like 50 or 75 miles until you see this little sort of ramshackle thing on the side of the road, and you're supposed to pull in and buy a ticket and go in and look at I think it's some kind of mummified thing that they found buried in the desert, and they don't even know what it is, but they're calling it Thing. That's kind of funny. So images like that can be very, very helpful and reminiscent with your audience if you have ways of sort of making parallels like that.
I also just really like the idea of this character being actually magic in a world where magic actually exists, but everything in his shop is fake. It's just a front so that he can do his illicit, illegal activities and have like a cover for that. Because like, of course, people would be like more convinced to overpay for something because it's a souvenir, it's a fake, and he has real magic, but hides the fact that he has real magic with the fake stuff so everyone thinks, oh, he's not actually magical. It's just a front.
Okay. You also mentioned something about or referenced the tone or the feeling of a buddy cop movie.
Mm-hmm.
So who are the buddies? Quentin and Glenn?
Yeah, Quentin and Glenn are sort of like buddy cop / like odd couple, where Glenn is very much like later in the series we'll see that Glenn is very much by the book, traditional, sort of like the fast-paced big city idea of like the FBI or CIA, like working for like a governmental entity, trying to do everything by the book. And then Quentin has very little respect for rules or laws and just kind of wants to do everything as easy and unconventional as possible.
Okay. And so this is kind of this has a spoofy feel to it that I'm detecting here, not a serious tone.
It's not meant to be like dramatic. It's sort of like an action adventure thing, but like with a comedic overtone. Kind of like a big inspiration for like the structure of this was Avatar: The Last Airbender, where it's definitely like that's a serious show that has like a lot of like adventure and action overtones, but like there's still elements of comedy to it. It's not like a downer like Game of Thrones.
Like Game of Thrones. Okay. So it's so I was thinking like Danny Glover and Mel Gibson kind of. One
Kinda.
guy is the trying to do the right thing, and the other guy is just hell-bent on doing it his own way, and his own way sometimes involves unscrupulous or questionable behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's cool. Anybody else have any questions along these lines? Don't let me hog the microphone here.
I actually wanted to say something. I had a question. Were you inspired at all by, well, I have a question and then a comment. Were you inspired at all by Gravity Falls? Because I remember you pitching it and I was like,
Yeah.
this sounds a lot like Gravity.
So here's the thing about
which is
that.
awesome.
I was not, and then I was. I had played that entire campaign and fully developed this entire character before seeing a single episode of Gravity Falls. Then after that, I was like telling my friend about it, and he's like, "Oh, this sounds like Gravity Falls." And I'm like, "What do you mean? This is like my original idea." So I watched Gravity Falls, and I'm like, "Yeah, there are some shocking similarities between Quentin and Grunkle Stan." I definitely still think they are very distinctly separate characters, but there are definitely a lot of surface level parallels there of the sort of like fake tourist trap, but also the secret, actual magical undertones, and the sort of like charlatan nature of the two characters, even to the point where like the hat and the cane, and like a lot of the visual components, I unintentionally like had parallels with Grunkle Stan. But I definitely think it's different enough that like they are still two very distinct separate characters.
Yeah, I was gonna say that like at first I was a little concerned, but when we started going through the table read, I saw that like your world building was very clear and it's a lot different in a lot of ways. But the tone is like very similar, which I like. So it gave me a better idea of the tone. But more specifically, like I did like the world building and everything, and the characters were very clear from the beginning, like the dynamics and stuff. I think there's one passage specifically where like Craven was getting like kind of being coerced into buying like stuff from the shop, and I think that one was just a big chunk of text, and like in the other ones, like the page that the screen is on right now, like it was kind of like blocked up. So maybe I would suggest like in that one kind of spacing it out a little bit into like the different like stages of that scene. But like besides that, like I did like the amount of like description in it, like showing not telling, that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
That raises a question. So or a couple of questions on my part. Is this the pilot episode?
This is part of the pilot episode. The way I want it to end for like the last, I'm at page 14 right now. So for the last 7 to 8 pages, where I want it to end is they meet up with Craven. They go hunt for monsters. Monsters come out. Glenn and Quentin are forced to fight them off using magic, and then it ends on the beat of Craven being like, holy shit, magic is real.
Okay, so the premise of your pilot then, if we take that as a separate notion from the series as a whole, which has assumingly a broader theme, the premise of your first episode then is magic is real.
Yes, magic is real, introducing it to the world, but not only is magic is real and very dangerous.
Okay. All right.
And then it also, my idea is it also ends on a cliffhanger where we find out that these monsters might not be an isolated incident. There might be some larger force behind it.
Okay. Do you have a sense of who your audience is for this?
I was thinking that this would be a young adult, not necessarily young adult, but like, yeah, kind of a young adult thing where kind of in the vein of like, or adult animation, because I think this could only work in an animated form. I think that live action, it'd just be too out there, especially for a TV budget. And I do want it to have the sort of vibe of like, it is an action adventure series, but not exactly be made for kids because of the fact of like the drugs and the guns and like I want like the violence and stuff. And then, but yeah, so like an adult animation action adventure series. So something that might air on like Adult Swim or Netflix or something like that.
May I ask which animation style you're thinking of, just so I could visualize in my head? Like, is it like a Family Guy animation, BoJack Horseman animation?
I think not necessarily either of those. Like, I guess if I had to apply a specific animation style, it would be sort of similar to Avatar with like the detailed, naturey backgrounds, and then these sort of like relatively simplistic character models, but like with the big action magic set pieces for the animation. I don't have a specific style in mind though.
Okay, thank you.
How did you decide on using the animation as your visual component?
I think that there is way too much in here to be done with live action at any reasonable TV budget. I also think that animation works best for an action adventure thing because you don't really have to skimp on the special effects when it comes to like the big fights. It's a lot easier to do big magical fights when it's all drawn versus when it's all computer generated and there are actors who are doing stunts. And I just think it opens up a wider opportunity and a wider realm of space to do creative things that aren't necessarily practical in live action, and to have the beautiful designs and like the very pretty backgrounds and stuff.
Okay. All right. So it was purely a pragmatic choice based on budgets and mostly budget, really, it sounds like. And
budget, but also I just think the art style would look better in for animation. Like I cannot visualize a way that this works in live action unless it's like the most expensive show of its time. Because like the only other thing I could think of really for reference are like some like the CW shows that that have just absolutely terrible special effects. You could tell that they're very restrained by their budget. Those would need to be either like made by HBO or it could be animated.
Interesting. I wonder. It's interesting in this particular time that we're in because the CW shows that I think you're referring to are now coming into 10, 15 years old, and a lot has happened in 10 years.
I'm talking about the new CW shows.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
So still looking a little campy then.
Yeah, it's okay. Like I've been watching like the new like CW, like the DC comic shows, and it's just the special effects are just so bad.
Right.
And yeah, and also I feel like there's so many characters in here that would be 100% CGI if it were in live action. Like there's no way you can do like you can have an actor be the goblins or have like it required an insane amount of makeup to make the elves and the other monsters look realistic. But like it just there's more ability
to do, you could stylize it more in animation. You don't necessarily have to make them look realistic. You can make them look cartoonish.
Well, on the other hand, The Mandalorian, for example, is doing pretty well with Mini Yoda and all of those otherworldly creatures, and especially with their adoption of what they call
like the 3D background thing.
Yeah, they call it the volume, which is basically, it's a cyclorama, but it's a projection cyclorama, so that you can put any environment really on the screen and the actors can interact with it as though it's really happening, as opposed to green or blue screens where it requires a certain amount of projection for the actors to sort of put themselves in the headspace of being in an alien world or on a spaceship.
On The Mandalorian, though, I find that like whenever they have like one of those like aliens that's like a puppet, it always feels kind of cumbersome and static to me. I feel like it's not as dynamic as I would want like the goblins to be or the monsters to be.
Okay, all right. I'm just playing devil's advocate with you now, because it's, you know, I kind of feel like, you know, if you do it as a cartoon, I'm totally taken out of the believability of it at that point. So
I don't necessarily think it's supposed to be believable. Like, this is not supposed to be like, oh, this is something that could happen in real life. It's just like, yeah, this is
right. But for the sake of the suspension of disbelief and the entertainment of the audience, I think we have to, you know, prune the path a little bit and give them sort of a something to follow that allows them a little bit of fanciful sort of suspension of disbelief. Yeah, we know dragons aren't real, but gosh, when you get a really good looking dragon flying across the scene, it's like, wow, but if it was real, that looks really cool and that could really happen.
I think we're kind of living in an era of TV right now where animation is kind of making a comeback for critically acclaimed series. Look at like Avatar has been making a big comeback, Korra, Young Justice, Clone Wars, stuff like that, where what was originally viewed as solely a kid's medium is now sort of being viewed as more of like, no, this isn't just like these shows are good, and it can be and like look at BoJack Horseman, for example. Like, that is a cartoon that's purely being viewed by like adult audiences. I think it opens up a lot of opportunity to have like a new medium. And also one of another show that's coming out like later this month on Amazon Prime, it's called Invincible. It's based off of a comic book series, and it is a fully animated like action adventure series with lots of gore and violence and profanity, but it still has that fun animated action adventure style, and that's kind of like what I'm going for. I could see an argument being made for live action. I just think that this particular sort would almost definitely work better in animation.
Okay. Any George Miller influences going on there?
I don't know much of his work.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'm just raising some conversation here to try to stimulate your thought process and explore the avenues of you know, choices and decision making. One of the things that I'm a little concerned with is the adult themes with regard to Quentin's sort of side gig, or maybe it's his real gig and the shop is his side gig. I'm not quite sure.
Kinda. It could be argued.
But if you wanted to cast a wider net and bring younger audiences into the fold, is there another way that, you know, is there another game that Quentin could be running that wouldn't involve running guns and drugs that would be a little bit more conducive to a younger audience and therefore broaden your appeal?
I think it can, but I think that would compromise a lot of other parts of the story.
Okay.
Just wondering, like, what does it play into the story, like, that makes you think you couldn't change it? Just wondering.
Well, I think it sets up a lot about what his character is, and I think that it's not necessarily that the drugs and the guns play into the story that much, although it kind of does a little later on. But it also comes to the fact that there's a lot of other parts of the story that would be not necessarily appropriate for children. Themes of like extreme violence and oppression and imprisonment and sort of like forced labor and stuff that might not necessarily be conducive to a child show to begin with. So if I'm already doing those themes anyway later in the show, I think it serves the character best to establish himself as a scoundrel kind of right away.
I see what you mean, definitely. Besides the extreme violence, though, most of those like oppression, forced labor, those things are touched on in Avatar, and that was like a mainly
true.
kid show. But just food for thought. I
Mhm.
see what you mean, though. Like, I agree that it's good to kind of set those boundaries beforehand if you feel like you're going to go into those topics later.
Yeah, it also just, it's to the point where I'm not really particularly interested in writing a kid show. Like, I don't necessarily, that's not my style. Like, I want to be able to make the sort of like more general audience jokes and themes and stuff like that.
I wonder if there's a way though to use code switching to where, like for
Yeah,
instance, instead of
he
it being
peddles fairy dust.
cocaine, I think that's where I'm going with this. Instead of it being cocaine, bales of cocaine, and a real, 1911 buried in a Bigfoot footprint. Maybe he's smuggling and running weapons that are magic weapons because his whole front is selling the public on the fact that magic isn't real, but he knows it is real, and there are people that function within his world that also know magic is real, and therefore there might be a clientele that would need magic weapons and magic potions. And so yes, he's running guns and drugs, but the guns are all magic weapons and the drugs are all magic drugs. And so there's a way of saying he's a gun running, drug toting, or drug running and gun toting antisocial element, but it's all not real, man. At the end of the day.
I considered that, but I kind of wanted the character to not have that much outside interaction with the magical world. He is sort of in his own isolated bubble, and he doesn't really know any other wizards or any other sorcerers or anything like that. That's why Glenn coming in from outside is such a big deal. This is sort of his first interaction with the external magical world, like, because he's sort of been isolated in his own small town bubble.
But then does he only use magic for pranking at this point?
He uses magic for personal gain purely.
Okay, but he had a mentor.
Yes, who's now gone under mysterious circumstances.
So by that metric, then technically he is aware of other magic users.
He's aware of them, but he hasn't interacted with them much. It was like his mentor was the only other wizard that he knew. He taught him, and now he's gone, and Quentin is the only known magic user in Wellsboro.
Okay, because apparently his magic use or his prowess as a magician has been recognized by a greater society on the outside, represented by Glenn. So there is a greater external magic component to the world that does know about magic and does use magic, and Glenn simply doesn't, or Quentin simply doesn't choose to interact with them.
Yes, this story is kind of his first interaction with the outside world of magic.
So I'm wondering if it's not worth, this is going to lead into my next series of questions. I'm wondering if it's not worth exploring the reasons why he doesn't want to be involved. Like, did something happen to him that made him reject the world and want to go withdraw within himself? What was it? What were those events? And are those types of things, are we going to get to discover those in the pilot before we just sort of get into the particulars of hunting down monsters and things? Because what I'm thinking is as a pilot, even though we have a lot of detail here, which is great, 15 pages into it, we're already ready to start going and hunting monsters, when it feels like we need to establish more of who's in the world.
Yeah.
Who does he live next to? Where does he go for his coffee? Who's selling him the coffee? And there might be opportunities where you can have these day-to-day interactions where, maybe one day Quentin walks in and the diner's bustling and he just wants his coffee, and the person behind the counter says, give me a few minutes, I'm really getting killed here. And maybe he, kind of does a little something and helps speed up that process. And then somebody says, wow, it's almost like it all kind of went away like magic. But then his role is then to shoot down that theory and sell the theory that he is peddling, that it's not really real, wink wink, for the sake of the audience, and have the really establish that tendency in his character as the antithesis of the real narrative, which is magic's not real, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's a big part of his character arc later. If I can just go into like the broader story that I have planned. So they hunt down the monsters. They think, okay, cool, that's the end of it. But then they learn that it's not, the monsters are not an isolated incident. It's part of a larger threat. In the world of this story, there's two parallel worlds, kind of. There's the world of the humans, and then there's the world of the elves. That's where Glenn, Scarwing, and all the goblins come from. The sort of like fairy tale world.
We need to know about. We need to learn about that.
Yeah, there were some references to that there's some references to that in the script early on, like how the goblins referenced that they were scared of the elves, and how Quentin said they're refugees and stuff like that. So the world of the elves is sort of ruled by an oppressive regime that sort of has, it's sort of elven supremacy. The elves rule above all, and then they subjugate the goblins and the fairies and the satyrs and the political dissidents who would threaten their structural order. And then the main threat is that the elves are planning on invading our world in order to further their supremacy, and then harness all of the magical energy of Earth in order to bolster their own powers. And that gets into, when the whole world is threatened, that comes at odds with Quentin. He's viewing this as, this is not my problem. I want to stay hidden. I want to stay safe. But then it comes to the point of, you have the power, you need to use it to protect others. So that's his evolution, learning to be not the sort of self-centered, self-aggrandizing, self-serving person, and learn to use his power to help others.
And that's going to be his transitional arc throughout the whole first season, right?
Yes.
Kind of like the way in Breaking Bad, the way he accepts his choices to go to the dark side and be a drug dealer, whereas throughout the first season it's
kind of a reverse Walter White.
Yeah, he's trying to be both things. He's still trying to be the teacher, but he's still trying to function in the shadows, and it starts clashing and becoming a problem. And these are interesting patterns that would resonate with an audience as well. If you can through revelation and exposition, really show Quentin's transition from purely selfish, sort of prankster, exploitation or squandering of his gifts, to a more generous use of his magic powers, and a more and accepting his role as more of a as greater than what he's been up to that point.
I have that journey sort of baked into his powers and his fighting style to begin with. Like, we obviously didn't get to that part yet, but when it comes to the first fight, when they're fighting against the monsters, it's Glenn mentioned that Quentin is a skilled illusionist, but not much of a fighter. All Quentin cares about in this fight is just not getting hit, keeping himself safe, throwing down distractions, illusory duplicates, something that just purely protects himself without actually helping any of his friends at this point, where Glenn is the one who's like actually doing the combat, taking down the monsters. And then over the course of the series, Quentin will learn that, like, I need to be more of a team player. I need to help out. And that can be reflected through his own use of magic in these fights.
Okay. So through conversation, I hope that it's starting to occur to you.
Yes.
That you have, I don't want to say obligation, because that's kind of a weird word, but it is sort of self-mandated at this point that you go back to Quentin's character dossier and give us all of this, because
I had it in his character dossier that his arc. Yeah.
This is big picture character development with a lot of explanation, that would make a really excellent Bible component. Because here's the thing, if this is a TV series, the pilot director is going to rely heavily on your Bible documents. But not just that guy, because that guy's going to leave, or girl, whoever the case may be. And then they're going to turn over the series to run of show directors, or usually they'll go 3-4 directors at a time, and they'll do them in groups, and one preps and one shoots, and then one wraps, and then one shoots, and then they go back and forth for 3 or 4 episodes, and then they'll bring in a fresh set of directors. Every time they do that, these people are coming in cold. So they're going to go to that Bible, that thing. They're going to look at these documents. They're not just going to watch the pilot episode and try to figure it all out. They're going to go to your Bible, and that's really where these documents start to really become super valuable.
I already have a broad overview of his character arc about learning to help others in his character dossier, and then the treatment I talk at large about the overarching story, and then the overarching themes and journeys for all the characters. Like, it's not just
we need Glenn now. It's like
Glenn's arc is already in his dossier, and that I'll be submitting, and it's in the treatment about what his arc is about, learning that he can't always play by the books, he can't always do the bureaucracy, and also he has to learn to adapt to the small town life. He doesn't just get to go in running and gunning. He needs to adapt to the circumstances surrounding him as well.
Well, it's not just that. That's all good. That's all internally motivated stuff. But there's a whole external sphere wrapped around this guy. He's not human. He's an elf. How did that happen? Tell us about his world and his. Who are they? Where are they? Do they all come here? Does he just come here? What's the deal? So you've got a lot of you have your own Silmarillion to start creating here.
Yeah, that all of that stuff is in the treatment as of now. And then Glenn's, I already wrote up Glenn's character dossier, and I'll be submitting that, but that gives us some more backstory into who he is as a character. Just long story short, he was a political dissident who was imprisoned and forced into labor. Then he was led a revolt, escaped, and then joined the Citadel of Arcana on Earth for the goal of protecting the humans from the same oppression that he experienced in his world.
Okay.
That's all written out.
So then my fear, what I see and what I'm concerned with at this point is, this is a huge, huge world that needs to be introduced to your audience. And it has to be introduced to them in a way where they can absorb it and digest it, and they can make that functional lexicon for every episode they're going to watch moving forward. And so this is an hour mode, right?
It's half hour, but it would be several episodes.
Yeah. I mean, half hour, you're barely going to get started if it's a half an hour. So think about, I mean, since somebody brought it up, the Game of Thrones, okay, like it or hate it, the first season, and particularly the first episode of Game of Thrones, is all world building. It's all world building. We don't see any. Well, we do see one ice guy, right? And that really is to tell us what the overarching story is going to be about, because otherwise it just looks like a medieval show. And so we have to know that there's magic components and things of that nature. So we get a little bit of that. We get little tasters in there. But in between that light sprinkling of stuff like that, we're introduced to Ned. We're introduced to his wife, his whole family, what they are, who they're about. We know that what's the kid from the island. We know that he's not really Ned's son, and that he was a political prisoner who became an adoptee. And we learn about where the wolves came from, and we learn about what it is to be in the North, and that there's a North and a South, and what that means. We learn about the culture. We pick up on their language, their colloquialisms.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to build, and that was a 1 hour installment series. So
the way that I kind of had this planned out was we'd see hints of the larger plot at the end of the first episode, kind of like as a stinger. and then in episode 2 we'd see more of that, and then by the time we're at episode 3 or 4, we see the full extent of what's going on. They're in the elven world. They like went in to do recon and then got stuck, and then they find out in there. That's when they figure out, okay, what exactly is going on. That's when they learn of the plot.
Because I almost see
Question.
coincidence. Oh yeah, go ahead.
What's up?
So I know you were saying that you were kind of basing it off like Avatar: The Last Airbender, or, like story, not story wise, but how it's serious.
In the structure,
serious.
yeah.
So is it like how in the first season, how we
don't see Ozai?
Met Aang first episode. This happened in that episode. We didn't get to go see the temple until like episode 4. This like episode 5, to where like that first season was very much still building the Avatar world.
I think the way I have it planned out is I have it this planned as 10 half-hour episodes. I obviously haven't written all those, so that could go up to 12 or 15 or something like that. Yeah. But the broad strokes are, for the first couple of episodes, we figure out the world, and then the vehicle for figuring out the world is going to be Craven, who's there. She just learns about magic. She knows nothing. So she's the audience surrogate. Then by mid-season, they're in the elven world. They find out what's going on. And then in the latter half of the season, they form the plan and to fight off against the invasion. And then it ends on the big invasion war battle. And that would be the end of the first season. I think that could be a self-contained first season, but that leaves open the possibilities of this world is established, these characters are established, what stories can be told next.
Because I'm getting from A to B too quick. I think because you're intimately aware of the things that you've created and the inspirations that you're drawing from, that you might be forgetting that your audience needs to come up to speed, and they might be coming up from zero. Like, think about me. I've never seen the Airbender movie, and I haven't seen the other TV show that Mariah mentioned earlier. So other than playing D&D when I was, in high school and a freshman in college, which was over 30 years ago. Well, no, not quite, but it was about 30 years ago. I've got no connection with this content whatsoever.
Yeah, so 10 episodes might be too few.
If you were going to hook me, I might be your lab experiment. I might be the guinea pig that you need to then teach about the world, bring me up to speed on magic, introduce me to the types of characters I'm going to meet, and really get me, and then you got to hook me somehow. So it's almost coincidentally, we were going to stop at like page 8, middle of page 9, something like that. I almost feel like your first episode stops with the introduction of Glenn. When Glenn comes in and he reveals that he's an elf. Can you see that sort of cliffhanger, freeze frame, final moment of the episode where, oh crap, better tune in next week to find out why this guy's got pointy ears, Yeah,
I can see that. I kind of wanted to end it on the cliffhanger of Craven being like, oh shit, magic's real. Because I don't know, I thought that if it was just that, I felt it was a little bit too much like just people talking. I feel like I kind of had to end it on an action scene in order to like hook people.
Not necessarily. Okay. I think if you build a compelling case in the beginning, which is it's going to be all about exposition, description, detail, and there's going to have to be a hook in there. And I think the hook is going to be, if Quentin is a magician and he is in the real world with the, what do they call them in Harry Potter? The ones that don't know anything about magic.
Muggles.
The moguls, right? So he goes to the coffee shop to buy coffee from a mogul. He probably does banking with the moguls, and he goes to a restaurant and eats dinner cooked by moguls, and all the time he's doing his stuff behind their back to make his life easier or more fun. And I think that might be the hook. It's like, just give us something to latch onto, let us learn about Quentin and that he's magical and that he uses his powers regardless of who knows about it, and he really lies about it anyway, and meet the people in his community and see the detail of his house and his business and the people that work for him. Let's learn that environment and understand it and get all that detail, and then through some opportunities with expository dialogue, we can find out that yeah, he had a mentor and he learned magic and stuff, but he doesn't really use it a lot. He doesn't want to, but it's super convenient when his coffee's late or when he's got to get through traffic and he can't or whatever. And we see him use those things. And then he's got these interesting people that work for him. And that's something that we might need to hover on for a minute, because we don't see Zip, Zap, and Zop every day. So we really got to see these characters. We got to digest what they are, who they are, what they want, what they're doing. Why are they working for Quentin? Where do they come from that they got to have a job? If they're creatures, I mean, creatures don't need jobs necessarily. That's the stereotypical, that's the chauvinistic assumption, right? Why do these guys even need a job? Right. So we have to learn about stuff like that. And a guy like me, somebody who doesn't consume this content on a daily basis, you got to bring me up to speed in a really big way very quickly.
Yeah, I definitely think I did skip over a little bit of that just because I planned on sort of reviewing that over time, like in the episodes, like in the later episodes, figuring out like what are these backstories, who, like, why do we care about these people, sort of develop them as we went on. But I definitely see the argument for starting it a little slower.
Here's something to think about. One of the things that I learned early on as a camera operator or a cinematographer doing second unit was I would get a lot of like insert assignments where there's a scene and something happens and the hero's at his desk and somebody rushes in the office and says, "This just came for you, Western Union," or in the mail or whatever. And he hands off the envelope, and then there's going to be an insert where the hero opens the envelope and looks at and reads the note. And the rule of thumb is, okay, so we saw the setup, we saw the scene, somebody came in, brought him a note, he's going to read it. We're on board with all of that as an audience. We know what's happening. But then the audience needs to know what the letter says. And so there's an insert of the letter. And the rule of thumb has always been, how long do you roll the camera on something like that, or the editor? How long do we allow that snippet to last on screen? And the rule of thumb is always, whatever you think it needs, take twice as long. Read it through twice, and that's where you cut, right? Because the audience has to see the guy rush in, watch the envelope get passed, understand it's a note, the hero needs to read it, opens it up, looks at it, in a close-up, we're looking at the hero reading the note, and then the cut to over the shoulder onto the note, and then bang, that's when we get to see what the hero already knows. And it's going to take us read it through and then read it through again and then cut that snippet. Right. So I think the flow of your story has to work with the same kind of premise. And that is that whatever you think the audience needs, give them twice as much so that we can really get up to speed when we're starting from nothing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then fit it into the context of your broadcast half an hour. And there's no rule that says that you can't have a to be continued. And a lot of times, think about this as well. A lot of times, even if a show is a half an hour show, quite often the pilot will be an hour.
Yeah, that's true.
So, your pilot could actually be a much longer concept. And if you have to break it in two for the broadcast half an hour schedule so it fits, then that's, so be it. But, a lot of times the pilot is twice as long as a normal episode. So there's that to consider. And then if we're talking about Netflix or, the internet, a lot of those constraints are slowly falling by the way.
Yeah, like you'll see like 36-minute episodes or something crazy you can never do on TV.
Yeah, Netflix is now just tearing up all those rules.
Yeah, and I remember like watching much of Netflix stuff. It's like random episodes will be like twice as long as other ones, or like 45 minutes when it's like a half-hour show.
So I just watched Kevin, the King of Queens, Kevin
James.
James. Yes, he had a new project on Netflix, and it was he plays a crew chief on a NASCAR team, and he works for this guy who's an eccentric, and they're buddies, and there's all this whole cast of characters, and we go through the whole first episode, and we meet the engine builder, we meet the diagnostics guy, we meet the manager, the HR person, we meet the accounts payable, the accountant. We meet all these people in the environment, but because it's NASCAR, and NASCAR is more in the public sphere, it's easier for that pilot to sort of smooth over a lot of details, right? You're different in that you're creating this world from scratch, and it's not like the normal world, and therefore we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. There is definitely a part of me that just wants to keep the world a little bit of a secret, and then learn more about it over time, not necessarily
Sure.
spend the entire
Sure.
first episode learning about the world.
Right.
I still want there to be questions.
We
that I
never
ask
would have
myself.
gotten through The Hobbit if Tolkien gave us everything we needed to know about Middle Earth in advance. But what he did do is he gave us enough about Middle Earth, and then through dialogue and through action, we learn more and more about Middle Earth as the Hobbit goes from start, beginning, middle, and end. And then we're totally set for the Lord of the Rings whenever that's going to happen, right? So yeah, you don't have to give us the whole thing up front, but we definitely need enough to start digesting this story and take a few things for granted that we understand how this works.
Well, let me ask you another question. How, this is something I just thought of. How would it maybe look with starting on with parallel stories of sort of, you see Quentin starting his day, sort of doing like the minor magic going throughout the day, like getting coffee, like walking through the town, and then parallel that with Glenn in the Citadel doing like his big city sort of office work, getting like seeing the assignment, and then going off to Wellsboro. And then that comes before we do like two, maybe 3 pages of that, then go into where we start here.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly been done before. It's a lot to do in a half an hour. Sometimes what'll happen is you'll have one episode will be about Quentin, or the first episode or two, and then we'll get an episode that's about Glenn, and we'll be like, who's this guy? And then we learn all about Glenn, and he gets the half an hour. And then the week after that, we're back to Quentin and Quentin's shop, and there's lots of different ways to do it. And I'm trying to think, there was something I saw recently that kind of working that way, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It was one episode we're looking at one character and what's going on with them, and then the next episode it's like, oh, now we're going to look at this guy for a while and figure out what's up with him, and then we're going to go back next week to the other guy again.
Yeah, my plan for reviewing Glenn's backstory, that doesn't come in until like midway through the season, because it's sort of they see like, okay, we know where we have to go now. We have to go into the Elven world to figure out how to stop this. And then Glenn is like, no, we can't do that. Like, why can't we? And he's like, we have to. And then they get stuck in there, like the portal closes, and they're like, now we learn why Glenn is so hesitant, what Glenn's backstory is, what brought him to this point.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that will work. So we just need enough about Glenn in the beginning so that we can be okay. I think I know what this guy's about. Because I find stuff like that distracting when I'm watching a show where I've got to learn the world. It's like, I'll spend a lot of time going, but why is he doing that? And why does he wear that thing? And what's that all about? And then I stop following the story. And then I realize I spent, I missed a whole bunch because I got sort of sidetracked with questions. So, but it's great. It's, lots of details. So a lot of fun. I'll bet you this is a lot of fun to work on, because it's taking in so many different directions. Does anybody have any other questions or anything that looks like we lost a few people here after 3 o'clock? So I guess it's just us here. Any other questions before we wrap this up? This was a good session, by the way. I appreciate this.
Thank you.
I think like overall, like the world building is really, really good. We kind of got into more of the like specific nitty gritty because you already have like the script didn't have any glaring issues or anything like that, which is great. I also personally found this session very helpful because like now I'm going back into my script and thinking like, oh no, I should change this and add more like characterization. So I'm like, maybe for the workshops in the future, I'd like to do more table reads. I'll try to prepare mine maybe for
Yeah.
like next week or the week after, but I like this. It's helpful.
Just need volunteers. That's all we need.
Mhm. And Professor Walsh, now you see
Yeah.
why I wanted to stick with this project instead of moving to a different one, because this project has so much stuff in it that I felt like it was almost like a waste to just start it and then start something new.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. And yes, and this has certainly opened my eyes to the extent to which you've been thinking about this. So of course now my expectations are higher. So it's like, okay, now I want to see some work, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. After this episode, everyone dies and it just follows this random little kid trying to get his ball back from across the fence or whatever.
No, it's good. It's really good, and I love that you found something that you're really psyched about, and you wanna explore this to its full potential. So that's terrific. That's really great. All right, they're dropping like flies here. It's you, me, and Mariah. So anything to add, Mariah, before we adjourn here?
No, I think that's it for me.
All right, well, thank you. I'm gonna head out as well.
Thank you both. Thank you, Ben, for your contribution and your sharing, and thanks, Mariah, for all of your excellent feedback. I'll see you guys next week.
Yep. Have a good weekend.